I am Nera Luce, Black Light, and I want to read you an important chapter, an important part of a chapter coming from my book, Metaphysics of Sexual Magick, that I'm trying to translate in English. And I will read you something coming from a recent non-professional translation that I do of this text that I advise you. It's not easy. It's really not easy. Translate a complex text as mine, as this, because also in Italian, my Italian is very erudite and complex. So you have to accept what it will come. And now I want to present myself with some word so you can know me. Who is Nera Luce? Nera Luce, Black Light, is 37 years old, Capricorn ascendant Scorpion. An occultist, a meta-scientist, an artist, a photographer of blue dart photographer, and a writer, an author and a personage of great polyhedral charisma and depth. My experience of as an astral traveler and a natural connection with the other plane of existence will bring together my attention and reflection from the early childhood on the themes inherent in the metaphysical nature of time, metaphysical nature of consciousness, and metaphysical nature of death, through which me, the author, has structured a profound and deep vision of reality. I am also a great lover of the high and icy mountains from many years, from when I was 20, a great lover of the sport in every manifestation, because for me sport is a philosophy involved philosophy of life, is a philosophy of life and the path of body awareness. I am currently involved in psycho-spiritual counseling, in parallel with my activity as a writer and reader, and I spend my existence mainly in solitude together with my beloved cats, pursuing my passions and following the path of self-evolution along the left and the path, the via of the left and the path, both and the right and the path, and both the path, but the right and the path is a recent acquisition. And then I am a strongly eccentric personality, as you can see, as everyone intelligent person can see, with an important Saturnian and Plutonian imprint, and I am governed by a Nordic temperament, great stoicism and daimonic inspiration. The path of the heroic warrior ascent under the guidance of the inner master. For me, the only master I recognize is me in the sense of the high self, in the sense of the diamond. And this part of heroic warrior ascent is for me the elective trust for a perennial alchemic metamorphosis and spiritual evolution. Then we can pass to the lecture. Yes? On the nature of reality. What is real? The representational parameters we use to filter those elements that connote the appearance of reality, placed within the space theater in which they took shape, are often structural derivatives of the way in which our body status led us to conceive. The first energetic configuration of a mental system that subjected to the gravitational call and responding to the metamorphic laws of synaptic action potentials, since the first encounter with a predominantly material reality model, has therefore adapted its behavior and adapted its interpretative parameters to those specific dynamics of knowing. And these were our knowledge already in the first strip of light that welcomed us on earth, was anchored right from the first impulses to the need to see separate sections of space along the continuum of the visible, and from here to know it predominantly in a dualistic way. The dual, so, presented itself to the vision at the first time, in the place of a perceived that could do nothing but depend on the material displacement of the bodily envelope. The bodily envelope as a priority vehicle and the first movements for exploratory purpose on the unknown anchor, and all the subsequent reflection that followed these dynamics was structured starting from the very constraints that this visible spectrum possessed for us along a progressive calcific phase, a detail lost in a period of our existence of which we don't possess explicit memory, which expanding itself along the structural plots of our neurology, has begun to fit the evolutionary dynamics of the first perceptive modalities. In fact, here, in this first years of earthly existence, that the constraints that will limit the liberation of mental power in its entirety sprout. It's here, and this cursive work starts from those preceding elements of the ordinary view, which privileging a selection of objects belonging to reassuring, known, tangible areas of our experience, earthly experience, will become the building blocks of our definitive cycle building. So this is a process, and those are necessary distractors for the process of a progressive adaptation to the reality thus appeared, from which the subsequent disintegration of that immaterial contact with the invisible will come to be determined, whose process of becoming will try in every way to recompose the original fracture generated by birth in the body, in detachment from unity. Something horrible and frightening appeared to our eyes. The fact of not being able to sustain such an existential condition was given as a premise for that search for definitive contours, which then went more widely, overlaying the whole way of thinking about it, in the tension search of the first hole in the world. It is the terror of being left alone in an unknown land of a mysterious configuration. What is this? To whose definition we will try to put in place by clarifying the out-of-focus areas, drawing boundaries, separating the section of space-time, applying categories meaning. This is a fundamental point that I want to convey. That is the fact that when the human come to take for granted that his natural reality are only those, and the only reason he is led to believe this is the calcification of the dialogic architecture with the material world, in a phase in which the structural plots of the brain anatomy still need to develop in full, and in which the way of the images are held back to memory in a predominant emotional way, by now, most of the representational parameters that dominates that way of conceiving have become crystallized at the leaven of the brain apparatus. The procedural mode in which the mind is ordinarily operating with respect to the construction of its concept of reality, far from being a conquest, is more than anything the mechanical result of an interactive process between a similar way of manifestation. The inquiry into what is real almost never reaches the imposing nature of a reflection, of a deep reflection that casts doubt on the very axis on which that same reality has been formed, simply because no possible alternative has ever been conceived. Thus, man learns to recognize what he has experienced mainly through the channels through which he was able to experience them in the ordinary way and in the manner of an indisputable absolute dogma. Only a man with this cross that the fall has made less evident, which is the spokesperson of the truth in every word, due to the limited nature of a vision that became an absolute benchmark by its inability to overcome itself. Since if these constraints have been at last extended by a reflection that is no longer egoic and human-centric, we will witness the birth of a new absolute individual who begins to doubt of what he has known through those channels, and in that specific way, and who should question many of his military certainties. It could find itself in a territory where it no longer has a sense, in which it cannot recognize the boundaries, the disambiguation between the perimeters of the form, in which everything is possible, and what happens now and here could equally happen not now and not here, since any certainty about nature of real he had was founded on nothingness. How did you come to conclude that you are your body? That you only inhabit that body in one world at a time? That events occur according to a linear temporal sequence? And that if something occupies a space, it cannot occupy another? Mostly, you have not concluded it. You were born into a system that had simply deluded you of a very convincing illusion, which could not be otherwise. And in truth, I tell you that often there has been no active reflection on this, since you have known or investigated another reality. What is real? What is real? My representation, my imaginal, my experience, my inner perception of this experience of or something that cannot be measured in these terms. If I cannot measure what I welcome and its awakening within my representation, how can I conceive it? And can I conceive something that I cannot separate, define, represent? And can I consider it more real than the real I perceive in illusion, in the earthly illusion? These are the fundamental question that about spoke in this chapter. A fundamental chapter in the end of the book, great, long and complex and structured and everything you want a book. Also, it is not synthetic, it is not superficial, and in this book I put all my soul and all my blood, and many times 1 year for work only to this, but now I wish you can read it in English in the future, because I'm working actively. I'm actively working to make it real, because it is the future. But for now, you can only listen to this my translation. I try to do the translation and make better my English. And it is the best I can do at the moment, I assure you. Thanks to listen, and here live from Nera Luce is Nera Luce, black light from Earth. Thank you all of you.